Well, thanks for meeting with me today, Chris. I know you guys have received a lot of questions via social media and emails, so we thought we'd just take this opportunity to be able to sit down and go through a few of the frequently asked questions.
Absolutely. We're getting a ton of positive feedback and a few great questions, phone calls, social media, different things. So this is definitely a good opportunity for us.
Well, we certainly appreciate you taking time to do it. So first question, right out of the gates, what sources of revenue does the department receive?
So we receive sources from revenue from 5 sources. The primary source and about between 75 and 80% of the budget every year, depending on the year, is from property tax. We get another substantial amount, about $1.5 million from Kootenai County EMS system. They pay us. They contract with us to provide the ambulance service out of our fire stations. The next is building inspection fees. So we provide actually all of the building inspection services for the city of Dalton Gardens. And then we have inspection fees here in the city of Post Falls and out in the county. That accounts for a smaller portion. Then we get a very, very small portion, like less than $50,000 of a $13 million budget from a small sales tax in the state that benefits fire districts. And then the last piece, and it's not a guarantee in a year, but is grants. And so and any money that we recognize on a grant, we also have to recognize as expending in the same year. So those are really our 5 primary sources of revenue.
Wow. So how does the department calculate its annual budget?
Well, we typically, the highest percentage of our budget, like any budget, is personnel. And so we start there with figuring our fixed costs. So our fixed costs every year are personnel. The benefits for the personnel are things like fuel and electricity. I mean, we have to put gas in the trucks to go. So all of those are what we kind of consider fixed costs. And then we take our needs, and we have a 10-year capital need list. And we look at all of our capital needs over that period and try to fit it in the years we can afford to if our budget allows.
Perfect. Sounds responsible to me. So what is a bond?
So a bond, which is different than a levy, a bond is a fixed amount of time that is specific for a capital purchase or capital purchases.
Right.
So this is a 10-year bond that we're aiming for here, and it's fixed. It's fixed at 10 years. The rate is fixed, and so although the cost to the individual may go down as our valuation goes up, the cost of the individual could never go up, and it does sunset at 10 years. So any bond is a levy is for operational use, and a bond is for capital use.
So why is it even necessary?
So, well, ultimately, and I know there's a big mantra of growth paying for growth right now, and believe me, we hear that every day. We see it, but the growth is outpacing the demand, and the growth in the community is outpacing the new construction growth, and so. Due to our normal revenue cycle, we don't collect enough to build new stations.
Yeah, that makes sense. As one of the fastest growing cities in the state of Idaho, that's understandable. Why can't the department just use its reserves?
Well, by law, we need to maintain a certain amount of reserves for operational needs. So if we depleted our reserves to just build a station, we wouldn't be maintaining our need to maintain at least a minimum of 4 months operating cash to stay in the green or in the black. And we don't know that it's the responsible way to do that, actually. Responsibility, to me, being responsible to the taxpayers, and I realize we're asking for more money, so I get that people don't get excited about saying responsibility of the taxpayers and talk about increasing growth. Right. But we also need to be responsible for still maintaining our services. Yeah. So in order to do some of these projects, we would have to cut services. But as anybody that's seen our presentation knows, our demand for service over the last 10 years is up 63%.
Yeah, absolutely. That totally makes sense. So how is Kootenai County Fire and Rescue going to pay for personnel to staff a new station?
So in Kootenai County, in Idaho period, we have what are called URDs, Urban Renewal Districts. And so we have a big urban renewal district coming off in about 3 years, and then another one coming off in about 4 years. So, and maybe I should back up. 2 of these stations are actually relocating existing stations. When the stations were built, and the last station was finished in 1999, Post Falls was very linear. It didn't extend much beyond Interstate 90. And so if you look at all of our stations, they're within a mile of I-90. And as you know, just driving around now, being within a mile of I-90 doesn't cover north and south. So this is actually relocating 2 of our stations to better serve our district. And with those, it's not hiring any additional staff. It's moving those staff members from the old station to the new station. And then it will be requiring us to hire 9 new staff members when the new station, Station 5, comes online in 3 to 4 years. But the URDs that will come off at that point in time should be enough to pay the staffing costs of those stations.
From the rebates?
From the rebates.
Okay, perfect, good. So next question is, what is an impact fee?
So an impact fee, great question. An impact fee is something that is collected by a jurisdiction that does allow for growth to pay for growth. So in the state of Idaho, though, fire districts are not allowed by law to collect impact fees on their own. We have to go through the local political jurisdictions. So for us, that involves 3 jurisdictions. Kootenai County for everything outside the city of Post Falls or Dalton Gardens, the city of Post Falls, and the city of Dalton Gardens. So they have to be willing to do that. Just last week, Kootenai County, the county, agreed to start collecting impact fees for the fire districts. We are currently working with the city of Post Falls to do the same. But in the past, it has not been allowed. So we're exploring the possibility, but it is nothing that the fire district can decide to do. We can go and lobby the city to do it, and in turn, the city would have to agree to it and then draft a resolution, and then the city council would have to vote to collect impact fees on our behalf. Same way with the county.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, you just answered the next question, so way to go there. If we were able to collect impact fees, could we avoid a bond this year?
We couldn't avoid this bond.
Right.
So this bond is getting us to our current operational need. There's kind of a general rule of thumb that for every 10,000 citizens, you need 1 fire station. And so with the new census, we're going to top 50,000 people in our fire district. So keep in mind, our fire district is the city of Post Falls, the city of Dalton Garden, the unincorporated areas around Post Falls, and the unincorporated areas on the east side of Coeur d'Alene. So our fire district with the new census is going to be about 52 to 53,000 people. And right now we have 4 staff stations, so we're already 1 station behind. The other piece with impact fees is it takes about 5 or 6 years of collecting impact fees to have enough to build 1 fire station. So we are attempting to get as we look at the impact fees now, we're looking at being able to get the impact fees for that 6-year, 7-year mark when we know we're going to need to build the next station because of growth.
Just forecasting.
Yep, absolutely. We really believe, I mean, if you look at any of the forecasts right now, and then people talk about the city of Post Falls having 100,000 residents by 2040, and everybody says, I don't think that'll ever really happen. And okay, maybe not 100, but I'd buy almost 100. And so we're looking at, the eventuality of having 8 or 9 fire stations in our fire district. And while we think 2040 sounds like a long time away, 19 years isn't a long time, especially when you look at needing impact fees to be able to collect impact fees for 5 to 6 years to be able to afford a station. It kind of maps out perfectly in that time frame of 19 years to build 3 more stations.
Yeah, and you certainly don't want to be behind that.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the worst thing that would be. So what is Kootenai County Fire and Rescue's coverage area?
So as I said a minute ago, we cover the city of Post Falls, and the majority of our calls are in the city of Post Falls. We go a little bit north of the city of Post Falls, and we cover south of the river for a couple of miles, and then we cover the city of Dalton Gardens, and then east of Coeur d'Alene, like in the Fernan area and Wolf Lodge area, and then we cover just about 5 miles south on Highway 97 from I-90 as well, into that development.
That's a huge
Yeah, we have
area.
about 100, just over 115 square miles of service area.
Wow. So when you talk about building a new fire station, what goes into building a new fire station?
That's also a great question because I think a lot of people think it's just a building with garage doors, and I'd remind everybody that this is where any one of our men or women spends a third of their life. Right. So they're here for 48 hours at a time, and then the next shift comes on for 48 hours. So it's got to house fire trucks. It's got to house the equipment that go on fire trucks. It's got to house things like breathing compressors so we can fill air bottles. It's got to have the ability to dry hoses and test hoses. But then it's also got to have a kitchen. It's got to have sleeping quarters. And as we get a diverse workforce, we have to look at individual sleeping quarters and things like that. We also take very seriously items like cancer prevention. So when we talk about we want a clean area and a dirty area, and while we want our firefighters to be clean all the time, we also, when they come back from a call, we want all the dirty stuff to be out in the garage and not to come in the garage,
Right.
or not to come in where they live for that 48 hours at a time.
Right.
It's also a handicapped accessible building. We got to meet the ADA requirements. It is a public building. The public owns it and has the right to use it. So we need to be conscious about that when we build it. And then, and this last year has taught, if it's taught us anything, we have to be much more savvy about our ability to interact and use the internet for things, and use, have virtual options that we didn't
Right.
used to use. Now it used to be that the captain in a station was the only one to have a computer, and now everybody has a computer or two computers based
Right.
on, we have our computers that we run calls on, and then we have our computers that we do training and things like that. So all of those elements go into making a fire station.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people probably forget because they think it's just capital expense with the building. But when you mention the amount of time that they give, they're living here on our behalf
Absolutely,
for our safety.
absolutely.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So why do fire trucks respond to medical calls with an ambulance?
That's probably the number one question we get all the time.
Yeah.
And the easy answer is because you're worth it.
Right.
The more complex answer is all of our fire trucks, so every one of our people that works at Kootenai Fire on the line or in a response role is certified to at least the EMT level, and most are certified to the advanced EMT level or the paramedic level. And so that's coming on a fire truck too. And so a lot of emergencies can't be handled by two people, or we want to send the closest unit. So while we only have 2 ambulances on duty at a time, we have 4 fire engines on duty at a time. And so those people, all of those people on the fire engines are certified and able to take care of you in your time of a medical emergency. And then if it's a difficult emergency, something like a cardiac arrest or a major trauma, something like that, then those people will get off the engine and ride in with the ambulance to the hospital, and we'll take that engine out of service.
Right. So the goal is really the response time.
The goal is
whoever's there
absolutely the
closest.
response
Yeah.
time. Our goal is to have the first truck, no matter what it looks like, whether it's a fire truck, a battalion chief rig, an ambulance, whatever it is, to have that first unit on scene within 4 minutes and 59 seconds of the emergency.
Yeah, and I would think that anyone that puts themselves or their family members in that position would think that's exactly the right answer. We want you there
It
as
is,
quickly
and,
as possible.
It's been interesting to see some of the answers come across this the social media lately of I'll never need a fire truck, and I think most people who have never called 911 would say that, and most people who have called 911 thought that until right as they called 911, and then everybody's pretty glad we're here.
Yeah, that's funny. So why did Kootenai County Fire and Rescue choose this election for its bond?
Well, so that's an interesting question. So in Idaho, you can only run an election certain times of the year, and the school districts have a little bit wider range than we do. And we simply weren't ready to run it in November. We didn't have all the facts and figures. So originally when we said we need to do this, and we looked at things, the stations came in over what we had budgeted. And so we've spent a lot of time paring those down and making it more reasonable. And again, we recognize the fact that we are asking for a bond, and we're asking people to pay an additional amount of money for an additional increased level of safety. But we're cognizant of that and want to be responsible to that. So
Yeah.
if we'd have run it in November, I think we would have been unrealistic with our ask, and we wanted to get it right, not get it quick.
Yeah, that sounds really responsible. Just have it fully vetted out and you did your homework to make sure that it was the right timing and the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
So well done with that. So why doesn't tax revenue from all the new construction pay for stations?
So when you look at, so a new station is about $3.5 million. And if you look at last year, so you drive around, and we think this too internally. When you drive around and you look and you go, we ought to be killing it on new construction.
Right.
Like, man, we should be getting another $1 million a year, right? And our new construction last year was just under $300,000. Well, if you look at $300,000, that's got to pay for, and we're capped at taking 3% property tax.
Right.
So we can at maximum look at a budget increase of between $500,000 and $600,000, which is money, but we have to take into account cost of living raises. Cost of fuel this year is going to be a lot more expensive.
Right.
We have to look at the benefits that we pay people. So if you did that and tried to save the money just off of that to pay for a new station, you're looking at between 10 and 12 years
Right.
with the other expenses before you could afford to do that. So that's, and I know there have been a lot of legislative bills lately. We are, don't forget, we're all taxpayers too. We all
Right.
own houses. And we like responsible growth, and we do think that growth should pay for growth, but I would tell you that just doing it off the formula that they have for property tax and new construction would never get us to the point we want to get to.
It's not that easy.
It's not.
Yeah.
And I would follow that up by saying one of the things that we're very keen on is approaching the city. Well, we've already approached them, and we're working with the city of Post Falls and the county to collect the impact fees, because we think we would like this to be the last bond that we ever have to ask for.
Right.
We don't necessarily, I mean, I think there are better ways to pay for fire stations, but we've not been allowed to do that in the past. And so when we've asked in the past, that's not been entertained. And thankfully, the current city and county administration both feel like it's a conversation worth having. But again, even if we start later this year collecting it, we're 5 years out from truly being able to spend that money on a fire station.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you so much. I know that you guys are incredibly busy and you're out saving lives and doing the people's work. So I appreciate you taking time to answer a few questions.
Our pleasure, Jamie, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. We absolutely love to serve the community, and we want to do it well and be responsible.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.